Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to talk about existential therapies. And for this, I created a slideshow. I hope you will like it and learn a lot about it. And let me know if it works for you. Here it is. Okay, so there are many existential therapies, and we're going to talk about them at least from three of the main theorists: Rollo May, Frankl, Irvin Yalom. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the origins and the contributing factors, some of the main ideas, and therapeutic interventions, some techniques, goals, and limitations. So let's go through it. One of the main idea is this phenomenological experience. So when you think about existential therapies, you have to think about how people experience their lives. And sometimes people talk about the others instead of talking about themselves. So in that sense, the first thing is to start with the first person perspective. I did this happened to me. And the phenomenology is like this subjective experience of living, and is a way that we experience life, time, problems, anything. So, for example, two people are in an airplane and the airplane crashes, and after they are saved, both are saved. It's a terrible crash, but still many people were saved. One of them comes out and says, I'm never going to fly again. This is a terrible thing. It's so dangerous to fly. And the other says, wow, I'm so impressed about technology because we were able to land even though it was this terrible accident, but we didn't die. So I know that I can trust pilots in airplanes. So you see, the experience can be totally different, even though they have the same, the same situation. They have the same accident. So perception is prior to conception in the sense that we feel first. So the feels are raw. Feeling sad is a raw feeling. And then we talk about sadness. That's more abstract. So the thinking process comes after perception, according to existentialists. Then another main idea is existential concerns. So we think about these terrible ideas of death, lack of meaning, feeling of no freedom, and sometimes existential isolation. These four elements or concerns are what creates a lot of problems in ourselves, a lot of depression and suffering and pain. So one of them, like thinking about meaning, well, a source of anxiety is feeling that there's no predetermined script to follow. So like, how do I live my life? What is the reason that I am alive? In a way, there's some culturally ready-made scripts that give you some meaning, but this is more based on, for example, obtaining money and goods. And this might not be fulfilling for everybody. Some people might say, yes, I'm here to be successful, to thrive in this economy and to create my own business. And this is going to create the meaning that I need. So that works for some people, but not for everybody. And for many, the sense of belonging through sharing meaning with society, that is something important. But of course, if the society is focused on money and goods, it might not be good enough for some people. It might be good for others. And the ones that they accept the meaning of society and they share, they feel this sense of belonging, that reduces anxiety. For the others, it might still not be enough. They might still keep on looking, searching for meaning. And another idea is freedom and responsibility. To these ideas, freedom and responsibility. For one side, the feeling of hopelessness and anxiety, and this difficulty to see through the ready-made scripts will be able to help. If you see through them, we'll be able to find the real meaning of the client, and that will reduce anxiety and hopelessness. And the other issue is the passive acceptance of problems. So you have to change that as well towards more agency, like feeling that you're in charge. So you appreciate your agency and your freedom, and you are not a passive acceptor of problems. You work on changing that. So the way to recreate your essence is through choice and action, through choosing and knowing that you can act upon your problems and not just be passively accepting them. In that sense, I want to introduce one of the first psychologists to talk about existentialism. It started with philosophy, with a lot of philosophers like Heidegger and Kierkegaard, and Rollo May in the beginning of the 1900s. Well, he was born in 1905, and he started working from the psychoanalytical perspective, because he was originally psychoanalytic. But he's considered the father of existentialism because he worked on this issue with anxiety and purpose of life. He thought life is absurd and it's full of suffering, and that's what creates a lot of the problems that people face. So through changing fear and anxiety of nothingness towards finding meaning and the authentic existence of the self, despite all the absurdities, and also like finding the freedom to choose how to live, that would create all the changes. And for finding meaning, he thought like we have to use myths. Myths help to provide meaning, and they also have a teaching function, because sometimes people don't know how to find meaning, but they are able to work through myths and other people's lives experiences, and use that for finding meaning in their own life. And the freedom to choose for how to live your life will help you to free yourself from barriers, which is one of the limitations that we create to ourselves. And this is all because he thought repressing anxiety will lead to mental problems, mental illnesses, and we need to avoid that. And that's Rollo May. Then we have Viktor Frankl. He's also a very, very important character. And of course, he started as a psychiatrist in the 30s working in Germany. And he was taken into a concentration camp from 39 to 41. So like very important years of his life. And he lost all his family. Everybody was taken to a concentration camp. However, he thought even in this terrible situation, life had meaning for himself and for many others that were able to survive. He thought like finding some spirituality, some connection with spirituality, keeping some hope. Like he had written just a book, and he wanted to keep the manuscript, but they didn't let him. So he thought like having this hope of like later on when he would get out of there, be able to write it again. And thinking of his wife, that maybe she would be alive, or that at least he had the opportunity to have known her. So thinking like love transcends it all, even all this suffering and pain, and being able to face your suffering and like, okay, this is what I'm here now, what is happening here now to me, but it's not gonna be forever, hopefully. And he started studying his inmates, the other prisoners, and he found that the prisoners that lost their lives was not so much because of lack of food, but for lack of meaning. Because he saw that, they were eating very little. You can see that in that terrible photo or picture, and they're like really skinny, so they were not very well fed. However, whatever they were getting was good enough to survive. The only problem was when they were lacking meaning. They thought that there's no point of living that terrible life. And once he came out of the concentration camp, he was able to survive it. He started working on this logotherapy. He was already a psychiatrist before he was in the concentration camp, so he had already like a very strong basis on psychology and medicine. And this idea was logos is meaning and therapy is healing. So healing through finding meaning was his purpose. And he thought that is also the way to find meaning in his life after he found out that nobody survived, nobody from his family. So he wanted to help others that had lost their meaning in life to find meaning. And to have a purpose of living. So he wrote also Man's Search for Meaning, and that helped him to keep on living until 1991. Or sorry, 1997. So he lived many, many years after this terrible situation. And then we have Irvin Yalom. I'm going to move myself again over here. Irvin Yalom, he was an American psychologist, an emeritus professor at Stanford University, and he thought a little bit more philosophical. He didn't suffer so much. He's a little bit younger than the other two psychologists that I just mentioned. He worked on the four givens of human condition: isolation, meaninglessness, mortality, and freedom. And he thought, like, if we don't work on this level of these four levels, then the people might be all the time suffering and depressed and not finding any reason to live. So working on these conditions, human conditions, it would be the way to lead a better existence. And then think about the existential psychotherapy in use. So considering the main ideas that I mentioned, plus the three different proposals of the three different existential therapists, we see that there's at least three phases in existential psychotherapy. First, you have to clarify the assumptions about the world. So what do you think about the world? What do you think about yourself as well? Examine the sources and authority of current value system in general, and then take new awareness and putting it into action. That is like the basis. Then some methods to work directly with the client would be cultivating a naive attitude. So you don't want to like really know everything and look for deep meanings, but just like thinking like, well, there's so much in this life, so much richness that we just look at that. And then facing limitations. So whatever is your limitation, you have to confront it, face it, and change it. And exploring a personal worldview, because you want to have like an approach that gives you also meaning through that exploration. And in that sense, of course, inquiring into meaning, you use at least these two techniques of confrontation and the empty chair technique. Some of the goals of therapy, so we want to increase awareness of freedom of choice, because we want to help clients see that they can change their lives, that there's freedom to choose to be in a suffering state or try to find meaning and feel better. So a lot of it is through self-awareness. So increasing self-awareness is also a goal of therapy. And another element that is really important is increase the level of responsibility of our own lives, because people that don't feel that they are responsible of their lives, they might, as I said before, be passively accepting their problems or think like someone else is the guilty one, maybe the parents, the childhood upbringing was the main reason of their suffering. However, you have to look at your own personal responsibility over your own life. That will help you to start acting upon changing the problems. And of course, reducing anxiety and pain, because you're understanding its origin, but you're working actively on changing it. And of course, finding meaning. So helping clients find meaning in life, that's one of the main goals. An example of therapeutic intervention. So let's say that we have these two people that survived the airplane crash, and we are working with the one that didn't find any meaning and he's suffering a lot. So he has a lot of anxiety. He has to fly for his job because he works around the world, going and coming. However, his anxiety level doesn't let him fly anymore. So we see that this is a signal of not living his most authentic self, and he's not able to fulfill his work needs. So he has to do something about it. So the process would be to start exploring the client's highest values and authentic self, to try to find a way to help him find meaning. And in general, the client's goals in life. So have they changed, if his goals have changed or not? What can we do? And work on it, finding meaning to reduce this suffering that he has. So it's going to take a while. That's one of the limitations, that it's sometimes very slow and it's very dense. You have to go very deeply into finding meaning. And some people, uh, they are, yeah, so affected by their lack of meaning and their passivity, or passiveness, that it takes a while to be able to do that. And in a way, it's subjective. So who finds meaning? What is meaning for each person? It's different and it's subjective. Based on phenomenology, you cannot find meaning for someone else. The person has to find meaning for himself. You can help him, but he has to work actively on it. And yeah, as I said just before, you could need a long process of exploration before you can really feel that you're arriving to the real meaning and real feeling of freedom. But it's not impossible, and it's highly fulfilling once you achieve meaning and find all the reasons why you're alive. Okay, so this is a short video. Thank you very much. My name was Elian Gomez, if I didn't mention it at the beginning. And I see you in another video. Bye bye.